Commissioner, I want to clarify something. When I had spoke about this before, we were talking about that. The words shovel-ready was in the mix, and that confused me from that standpoint. I was interpreting that we needed to get that under wraps. Since then, found out differently. You explained it really good tonight that we don't have to. So 441, I think, is what everybody's talking about, is going to be major, but I thought we were being shovel-ready that we needed to get the consensus from the group. But the city manager will be putting together the resolutions necessary for us to get back to Mr. Fish for the proper things that we would want to do with this from the council and what we want to support.
Soon the mayor too. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I really enjoy being educated in each council meeting where that's possible, and it's a good education. I really appreciate it. Do I understand you were going to talk a little bit more about 441 and the interchange right outside Montour to go into First Avenue? Were you going to discuss that, or was that part of your discussion?
I can touch on that a bit. I mean, part of what the city has weighed in on is, I think the city scored some major successes in the past with getting the flyover the way it is going to be built.
Absolutely.
And I think the perception, and I'm going to use this word carefully, the perception is that suddenly this flood of traffic is going to just overwhelm Outdoora. But the reality is people are still coming in. They either know the area or they don't. And the ones that don't, the standard GPS is going to direct traffic on the 441. That's what GPS does. If they're staying in a B&B downtown, if they're staying at Lakeside, if they're coming to downtown, First Avenue is going to say, go straight ahead. But the visual of it all, the traffic flow is going to be between 441 and 46. I mean, it's a 6-lane connecting to a 6-lane. So I understand the fear, and I have concerns too, because 6 lanes worth of traffic, and you're hoping you don't get flooded. And I just want to alleviate a little bit to a degree that the design that I saw, the way they're tapering it through the intersection, the landscaping, I mean, there's a lot of visual cues to slow down. And that was something that I saw DOT take extremely seriously, and I applaud the city of Outdoora for getting them to redesign what they were originally going to do there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, TJ, I've got a question about your roundabout. I lived in southern New Jersey for 13 years outside Philadelphia. Route 30, Route 70, Route 71, they all had roundabouts. And I think the theory in 1940, when they put them in, when they did, the traffic flows better. Yeah. They're taking them all out now. Yeah. Because traffic doesn't flow better. But you did say the magic word that it's cheaper. I think a roundabout there will be okay. I do have some concerns if traffic starts picking up, because a roundabout, when you have an accident, it's traffic looks like the I-4 comes there screeching halt. Now I was curious about why FDOT's kind of going with them, because there's one on 44 right now by DeLand, and when some of the other states have had them, we're ripping them out. So
I'm going to give you just a brief history, but the New England roundabouts, Jersey has a certain style, Massachusetts has a really small style, and they're archaic. That's not what we design anymore. And the one on the way to DeLand, when a grandmother and 3 granddaughters died in a crash there, DOT was very quick to follow their recently adopted policy that when something like that occurs, it met a signal warrant. There was already a signal there. Clearly the signal wasn't taking care of the deal. The number 1, number 2, and number 3 reasons for roundabouts: safety, safety, safety. And that particular geometry is so awkward that it supersedes anything that signal could ever solve. So that's the real reason. The fact that they also happen to save money, that's good. But the safety factor is overwhelming. And the one on the way to DeLand, the one just south of Asatula, these are 160, 180 feet. So they're not made that you stop, they're made that you yield and the traffic flows. And we're not stopping there. We're looking at putting them on US 27 next to downtown Leesburg, because it works better than what's there now. Okay. And I appreciate you asking, because the ones in Jersey, they clearly do not work.
Oh, I can attest to that.
Well, your Richards real quick, because I lived there also, and I saw all the roundabouts going out replaced with these great big huge intersections, which do not work either.
No.
Okay. Mr. Slavin.
Thank you, Mayor.
A question, and I certainly like the 441 first approach. Can you speak to any sort of multi-use path or golf cart path or access road that might be part of that project from the country club up to the public shopping center, the intersection there, to help alleviate some of the pressure on the roadway?
There's a couple of things there. The actual 6-lane project will include 5-foot sidewalks each side, and it will include, they're now doing, and I don't want to misstate it, but the new policy is up to 7 feet for bike lanes on the road. I have to check that design because it was designed just as they were changing from 4 to 7. The issue between Country Club's entrance and getting over to the public's property through the Simpson property, that can be addressed either effectively when Simpson property develops and whatever's approved in there creates better connectivity. I think with the current design, the City of Mount Dora would have to weigh in. There's nothing in the Trails Master Plan, and when you're dealing with golf carts, DOT unfortunately is very slow to react to golf cart needs. They'll do bicycle and pedestrian just like that. Golf carts, whole different situation with them. They barely will even allow them to cross state roads. So I would say that your best opportunity for that connectivity is with whatever gets approved on the Simpson property. And I know that that's a very in play location right now as we look at the 6-laning happening, utility easements happening and all that. So, but I would say that that's the best way for the city to address it. To ask DOT to build a golf cart path, they're going to balk at that.
Are you talking about like an access road, a separate access road from Country Club into frontage road, I guess?
Yeah, I was addressing what they were doing in the right of way, which is a 5-foot sidewalk. But what could happen to enhance connectivity for golf carts could be done through approval of any development that might happen in there.
Yeah, that makes sense, TJ, to do it that way. The reason why that's a concern, I certainly underscore what Mr. Slaby has said. The only golf cart community in the entire city of Mount Dora, in the ordinances, is the Country Club of Mount Dora.
Okay.
So it's an official ordinance that allows that, and so those residents there are looking forward to the possibility of having that access, not only for safety standpoint, but just for convenience as well.
We ran into the same issue in Tavares. Tavares did their downtown core golf cart friendly. The northern part of Tavares, where Hardee's and all those things are, they wanted to be able to cross. DOT would not approve it. Now, there were safety factors and engineering. Strangely enough, that's a 6-lane, but over at Dead River Road and 19 on the west side of downtown, we were able to get them to approve under engineering, get engineer sealed that we've met the safety requirements. So I just want to warn you, being able to connect the north side of Mount Dora to downtown core with golf carts, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but you've got to, 6-lane 441 will serve as a divide to doing that.
And that makes sense also because the only suggestion that I think Mr. Slaby has brought up, and I'm reiterating as well, is that it's just that east-west section from the Country Club to Loch Levin Landing that is the convenience, because there are like 2,000 people that are at the Country Club of Mount Dora, making easy access, keeps people off the highway. And
I think that's good for everybody.
Safer that way.
And I want to just mention,
not downtown, just that one direction.
We have within the Lake Sumter MPO, we have an unprecedented community that their primary access is by the golf cart, and that is the villages. So this is a very effective alternate mode of transportation.
Any other questions from council? TJ, I want to thank you very much for coming tonight. Very enlightening.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, get a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Mayor, if I could, I had 2 items, if it pleases you, I guess. One was I had a board appointment. I don't know if we should put in board appointments for Dudley Askew to the CRA. If I could add that there under board appointments. Yeah. And then the other one was, I know that a lot of people had reached out to me about the issue at 425 Alexander, and I, just wanted to see if it was possible to move that up on the agenda. Of course, at your pleasure.
And that's going to be discussed at the city managers, and we have a lot of resolutions that we're going to be voting. We got 14 resolutions. And my own personal, I would like to go through the resolutions and get through them, so then when we get to her issue, then we can she can put that number one on her agenda item.
Yeah, I think it's on there, it's just through her report,
Right.
as I understand it, and that's fine. I like the first, no problem with that, so I'll move the agenda with the first suggested amendment.
Get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
That's good. Okay, approval of minutes, we have approval of city council regular session minutes dated June 6th, 2017. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Any comments, questions on the agenda?
Yep, I had a couple of items there. I don't know if you added them.
I have not added them at this point in time. Councilmember Slavy requested a little bit of a few changes to a couple of the comments. In general, one comment was very similar to what was already presented. I think best to go to the page, if that's okay with you, Councilmember Slavy. Sure. So I don't want to misrepresent it. Just 1 second.
It will be on page 26.
26?
Doesn't work.
Oh, yes, sorry, I was already covering up. Page 26, where we, the last paragraph, there was some concern that we spoke about Gianni, the current operator of the business, and we put a lot of general information in there versus the folks who spoke beforehand were basically either in consent or opposition, in this case opposition. Mr. Slavy thought for consistency that we might want to put that he stated the reasoning for his statement and consent of it because it's his business. I leave it up to the council. The only reason this one is different is because he was the owner and the operator of the business, and that would be the only reason. But again, I leave that to council because of the type of minutes that you wish for us to take care of. That if you wish to make that change, and Mr. Slavy may have that the details with him, that we can do that. But that's up to council's decision.
Well, we have the audio for everything, if that makes any difference.
Well, and the audio basically reflects what is stated
Yeah, that's my
here.
point.
Again, Mr. Slavy was looking at consistency of the other comments saying in consent. Am I stating that right?
I think
Okay.
the first 4 comments were person spoke in opposition to the wall being constructed, blah, blah, blah. And then the last one was in support of it, and it just seems to me that it should say person spoke in support of the wall constructed. Because the other 4 people, no doubt, if they had a chance to speak, would say they made some really, really good points, and those aren't delineated in the detail. And just for consistency, it seems like that's how it should be in the minutes.
Well, okay, and I hear what you're saying, but I think with Mr. Gianni, when he was speaking at night, he wasn't speaking against or in favor. He was speaking that he was the applicant, and it was his application. So naturally, he's going to be in favor of his application at that point. But so he wasn't here given a synopsis for or against at that point. He was explaining this is his business, and this was, he felt, as for business purposes, what would need to be done, went through the system, things like that. So I don't see that as being a for, and if that's what it was stated, it's not a for or against, I have no problem with that. That is just a general statement at that.
I didn't hear him say for or against
I
either.
have no problem with it either.
But I don't have a problem doing
Or
that. I know he
no,
also
I think-
said he was threatened, his family was
No,
threatened. so-
that's
Yeah.
fine. I'm just trying to, keep it consistent every time. Okay, the other one,
And we are working, sorry, Mr. Singh, we are working to make sure that we are consistent, and I appreciate him pointing that out, because, again, our goal is to give you notices in the sense of the minutes that are very consistent and very similar to each other, and that we're only looking at it from that perspective. So I do appreciate that.
and then the other one is, here, this one is specifically, the minutes currently state, generally the city, in another section, generally the city council members express concern with the way the wall is being constructed in front of Gianni's restaurant. And I suggest that it be changed to, generally city council members express concern that the wall constructed in front of Gianni's Italian restaurant would deprive the public of the ability to freely use public property.
Which
I don't
page?
have
No.
Top of page 30,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, no, because we can't insert editorializing on that, and I think if it's just stated, and real quick, the purpose of minutes and what we do, when the council first started, when this council first started, when we first were elected. Okay, no, that's okay, just want to just give a quick, real quick. No, this is fine.
And
I think I'm trying to keep it moving though. The point that I
Okay.
want to make, if you don't mind, I understand the reason for it, but there's a expressed concerns that the wall constructed in front of the way the wall was constructed. I don't have a problem with the way the wall was constructed. My comments were not to the way the wall was constructed. I did not comment on the tap cons or the stucco or the cement blocks or not. I commented on that it was a deprivement of the citizenry of public space. So whether you want to say Councilman Slavy said, that's fine, but I want the minutes to reflect that somebody at least stood up, and there were others that said, this is public property, and it needs to be identified that it's public property, and someone said, we can't give it to a private entity for use in some manner. Now, if you want to override that, that's fine, you know, the winners get to write history, and I'm just trying to write the history as the way I heard it, and it was on the recording, that there were some pretty upset, there were some comments made that this property was being used for public, for private purpose of public property. So if you vote down the motion or the idea, you don't get that history.
I
Ms. Dillon.
I agree with Mr. Slavy on this. I had, the way the words are on the page, it says expressed concerns with the way the wall is being constructed. I don't also have any concern with the way the wall is being constructed because I know nothing about constructing a wall. I have a concern that the wall is being constructed at all. And that is not reflected in here. I believe that those council members who expressed their concern with this issue was not with the way the wall was being constructed, but that the wall was being constructed at all. So I'm going to have to request that the words be changed to reflect what I think is the concern that was actually expressed during the council meeting.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. We're supposed to have action minutes, and we're not getting into action minutes. The policy of this council is to have action minutes. There's even more detail than typical action minutes are. Mr. Slavy said that the winner gets to set the agenda. There are no winners in this. This was just a comment that was not even on the agenda. This issue was not even on the agenda. We're trying to make it a political agenda issue now. I don't know, from a campaign standpoint or whatever, everybody knows what the discussion was that was here. The public has weighed in on it. We had great discussion from those that made comments pro and con, and now to turn it into something, I don't favor that.
We'll go that route, Mr. Wilson.
I don't favor the change.
Okay. Let's keep it. We got, okay, bottom line. Okay. And I want to talk. Great.
May I make a comment?
Real quick, please.
I would just say, I don't agree with it, but I understand what you're saying. If we're going to make a change rather than going into the details, can it just say generally city council members express concerns? That's it. We had different positions of how we got. We just expressed concerns, but it was about different things.
I'm on board.
And that just says it.
Yeah.
Let's go there. Good idea.
Good enough. Thank
Nice
you.
comment.
Alderman, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And again, the issue, we do have action minutes. Okay, we started off with, we had minutes that were really long. That was no good. It was suggested go to action minutes. Then we went to an action minutes where it was just action, straight action, okay, too short. So Gwen and I, Ms. Johns and I got together and we talked about a few issues on that, and along with Mr. Pastu at the time, and where we come up with the action minutes with modified, with as brief as you can. Minutes only have to be just to give reflection of what happened and to give a good sense of what happened at a meeting, not to go into detail, not because we are not stenographers and we don't do that we don't do transcripts of these meetings. So with that, and I think the minutes that Ms. John has been putting together are pretty good, and occasionally, yes, we might have to adjust a few words here and there. but they're not meant to be a historical word-for-word below what goes on inside of a council meeting. If it did, man, we got 695 pages of just an agenda, let alone I don't want 695 pages of minutes either, so.
I move we approve the agenda with those changes, one
As
suggested
mentioned
by
by Ms. Hope,
Councilman
second.
Hopes and the other one by Mr. Slavy.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Good enough. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have the resolutions, we're gonna get into these,
Is 37?
Okay, approval of resolution number 2017-71, contract with, Erwin R. Barfield LLC for general land acquisition services. Ms. Cockcroft, can we have the title read, please?
Yes, sir. Resolution number 2017-71, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, approving a piggyback contract and work order with Edwin R. Barfield LLC to provide land acquisition support services for various projects, authorizing the mayor to execute the contract in accordance with sound procurement practices and principles, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing for savings provision, providing for scrivener's errors, providing for conflict severability and effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council. As you're aware, we've been talking for several months back to March 25th, I believe, the work session in which you permitted me to be able to seek someone to assist us in looking for someone to be able to go out and act as a broker, if you would like to call it that, in the purpose of land acquisition, property ownership, easements, just discussing the general cost of a piece of property. We've got the property over on County Road 19 that we're looking at. We've got property throughout the city that we're looking at. So this is to actually put the work order in place. It's a piggyback. We've been working on it for several months. We had some problems with the previous piggyback, so we finally found a piggyback with Seminole County. This contract will only be in basically current through the end of September September 30th, 2017. Then we will bring it back to you either as a bid at that point in time, which I'm perfectly fine with, or we'll as probably an RFQ for qualifications, or we'll choose to go with another piggyback. But Mr. Barfield is welcoming the opportunity to go out and check with several of our owners in the area. We have spoken with several, but he actually is the person who's professional in this manner. He knows the property. He understands the reasonableness of what's being asked, and then he'll bring back a report to you. So I would encourage the approval of this particular work order.
Have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Any comments?
Just,
Mr. Olson?
yes, thank you. If you turn to page 42, I want to pay a compliment. Maybe it's to our Ms. Cockcroft, our counsel, or maybe it's to Robin, I don't know, Ms. Hayes. Notice the blue highlighted item, the general provisions of any of these piggyback contracts, so we don't have to redo and hash out these. We have a provision of every type contract that has conditions are separately attached through this web page, and in that one we have all of the hold harmless agreements and all those protections that save this city, and I think that's a wonderful way to do that. So as long as those are there, I like that. It makes it easy because it's already time tested, that it's attached to every contract, and it gives superb protections to our residents and the city council and city employees from litigation and other areas like that. So I like that. I just wanted to say thanks for doing that. Whoever did that, I don't know, but thank you. Good job.
Our resolutions have become a lot more professional over the years. And any other comments from council? Any comments from the public on this item? Tina and Ms. Johns, can we have a roll call please?
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Ms. Hoax?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Okay, we have approval of resolution number 2017-77, Same gentleman for utility-related land acquisition services. Ms. Cockcroft, we have the title read, please.
Yes, sir. Resolution number 2017-77, a resolution of City of Mount Dora, Florida, approving a piggyback contract and work order with Edwin R. Barfield LLC to provide utility-related land acquisition support services, authorizing the mayor to execute the contract in accordance with sound procurement practices and principles, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing for a savings provision, providing for scrivener's errors, conflicts, severability, and effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes?
Yes, Mayor and council members. This one's a little different from the one we just talked about. It is still with Mr. Barfield, but this is actually in pursuit of various utility, water, sanitary sewer, and reclaimed water lands and right-of-ways. That's really the difference in these two projects. As you'll see in the budget impact, this is for specifically funding-wise, comes out of the water sewer funds, all related to US 441, 441-46, Wolf Branch Road, 44B, excuse me, and Innovation Way. So these are otherwise similar contracts. We're piggybacking the same contract with Seminole County, and I would be glad to answer any questions. But we're happy to get this work order going as well.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any comments, questions from the council? Seeing none, anybody from the public wishing to address? Name and address, please.
My name is Dr. Christine King Harris, and my address is 402 Jackson Avenue, Mount Dora. I also am a part of the Martin Luther King Center, 798 Florida Avenue, and I have residence at 1405 Hackett, which is in the business district. The reason I'm standing this evening, there is a process which I don't hear that has gone forth with the Barfield Company that requires a federal DUNS number.
What number, please?
A DUNS, D-U-N, which means they've been cleared and that they're qualified not just to piggyback, but to carry the project should everything else fail. So it's an insurance process, and all of the plans have to go through the Department of Homeland Security. So that's why I'm standing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address? Seeing none, any back to council? Ms. Johnson, we have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Hope?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-78, interlocal agreement between the City of Mount Dora and the Northeast CRA Board. Ms. Cockcroft, we have the title read.
Yes, sir. Resolution number 2017-78, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora approving an interlocal agreement with the Northeast Community Redevelopment Agency, authorizing the mayor to execute said interlocal agreement, providing for implementing action, savings, conflicts, severability, and effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. If it's okay, Mayor, I'm going to speak about this item and the next item because they are the same and it just makes more sense. One is with the Northeast CRA, the other one's with the Downtown CRA or the Core CRA. What this interlocal agreement allows is, simply put, it allows those CRA boards to interact with the city boards to be able to make purchases, to be able to carry out business from that perspective. Right now, as an individual board, they cannot carry out those purposes of acting on their own. So this allows that interlocal process to take place. They can make use of our purchasing manual, our purchasing process, and any of our other type of administrative processes if you wish to look at it from that way. That's a simple way of stating it. The corresponding two resolutions that you're going to see on the Northeast CRA board later on tonight when we close out the regular board meeting and the CRA allow those boards, which you are also part of, for you to accept that interlocal agreement from that perspective. But this is a standard, I hate to say standard operating, but it's basically a standard operating for those boards to be able to use our services.
Okay, so these are basically the same except one's for CRA and one's for the Northeast.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so with that,
I
I'd
move
like the
approval.
motion to approve
I'm sorry.
2017-78 and 2017-80.
And move approval.
Second.
Do you have to, does the attorney have to read this?
Need to do this separate.
Do I have to do them separate?
For her, yes.
I move 78.
But you can do
We'll go back
78.
78.
I move 78.
Thank you. Second. Any comments from the council?
Only comment, Mayor, is that, and council members, is that the CRAs, as I understand it, are kind of crippled now to actually do business they would like to do. They have to do it through those that have standing, so to speak, and that's what this does.
Because they don't have their own
That's
purchasing department or
Correct.
anything like that, so they have
And that's not the only
city to
limitation.
use the city's stuff.
There are many other limitations they would have, because
I only have
Advisory.
just one comment, and even though that my comment is not about the Northeast CRA particularly, it's the other one that it's more than just the downtown. It includes the Highland,
Yes, ma'am.
Midtown and the Highland Street corridor as well. So I sometimes think we tend to sort of forget that, but it is the CRA is a big old L-shaped.
I heard her say
Actually goes
four.
up to Donnelly, so
It does.
it's a sideways T. All right, that's all my only comment.
Upside down
Any
L,
other comments?
upside down L.
No, it's a T.
Okay. Any member of the public wish to address the T effect? Okay, seeing none, we have a roll call vote, please. Pardon me, did you
Mr.
have a comment? I'm
Robinson?
sorry, well, excuse me.
I said, just that Mount Dora, if we consider this Mount Dora one community,
Yes.
Correct.
and the residential is the northeast, and the business focus is the downtown, or uptown, whatever they get to call themselves.
Thank
Or
you.
one community.
Thank you for your comment. Roll call vote, please, Ms. Jones.
Mr. Robson?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Ms. Hope?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Okay, and this one is the approval of resolution number 2017-8, the interlocal agreement between the city of Mount Dora and the Community Redevelopment Agency. Ms. Cockcroft, we have the title read for that one then.
Resolution number 2017-80, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora approving the interlocal agreement with the Community Redevelopment Agency, authorizing the mayor to execute said interlocal agreement, providing for implementing an action savings conflicts, perimeters, error, severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, or Ms. Hayes.
Again, this is just allows, again, I think we've put some good verbiage in there, the sharing of resources and staff, collaboration of projects, again, for purchasing and so forth, so.
Any more comments from council? Oh, excuse me, have a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Any comments from council? None. Okay, anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Seeing none, Ms. Jones, we have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Hope?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Mr. Robson?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-85, interlocal agreement with the Lake County for street lighting in Sylvan Shores. Ms. Cockcroft, title please.
Resolution number 2017-85, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, to enter into an interlocal agreement between Lake County, Florida, and the City of Mount Dora for street lighting in Sylvan Shores, authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing for scrivener's errors, providing for conflict severability, and effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, council. So this particular one is an interlocal agreement between the city, Mount Dora, and Lake County. The city's been providing street lighting services to the residents of Sylvan Shores subdivision for many years, under different agreements. Some dated back to 1993, and even further back to October of 1957. Under those agreements, the city has paid all operating and maintenance costs for the 111 streetlights in Sylvan Shores, even though this area is not part of the city limits. The city determined that the homeowners in the Sylvan Shore subdivision should be responsible for paying the cost of streetlights. Since this residency is a part of the county, the only mechanism for the city to collect the payment is through an assessment of the property tax bill process, which is called an MSBU, or Municipal Service Benefit Unit. District Lake County has established Sylvan Shores as a MSBU and will levy the non-ad valorem assessment for streetlights in the Sylvan Shores area. The city and Lake County both desire to enter into this interlocal agreement. And I'd like to read just a little bit about the contract for just a moment, because I think it's important to mention. This cost for this is $15,445, which will be sent from the county to the city in June, July timeframe of each year. The annual street light fee includes an estimate of power cost charges during the fiscal year. Since the actual power cost charges during a fiscal year will differ from the initial estimate, the city will include a separate true-up adjustment for the current year in the annual street light fee for the upcoming year. The upcoming year is looking at 11 months versus 12 months because of the timing. The city also agrees and acknowledges that it will request an increase in rate exceeds when rates exceed, the amount that has been duly noticed to the property owners. The county is required to hold a public hearing to adjust such rates. In 2017 and 18 and 18-19, the maximum set forth has already been established, and then the owners in that area, the homeowners, have already acknowledged that. The important portion of it says the county intends to send notice required by section 197.3632 Florida statutes to the property owners within the MSBU, which shall include proposed maximum rates for the subsequent 5 years. The rates in this notice shall be adjusted by 5% for each of the 5 fiscal years, provided an estimate of the maximum rates. Any increase beyond the maximum shall require a public hearing in accordance. So again, the city is working entirely with the county, and all notices will be sent to all the homeowners through this whole process. The city agrees to maintain all street lighting within the benefit area. As far as maintenance, maintenance includes but not limited to repairing and replacing the posts, repainting poles when needed, replacing bulbs, etc. The city also agrees and acknowledges that all requests and services of maintenance shall be directed by the county to the city. The city also agrees that the lighting infrastructure, poles, globes shall be maintained in their current state in order to preserve the historic nature of the style of lights in the benefit areas. In the event the infrastructure poles and globes needed to be replaced, cannot be ordered or cannot be replaced, the city shall allow Sylvan Shores to be part of that process of retaining and purchasing new ones. So I believe the city and the county have reached a very solid interlocal agreement. This has been an ongoing process. I'm happy to have this closed. I believe Charles is still here, so he can answer any questions. He's back here. If you have any of him from an electrical perspective or from working this entire interlocal agreement, he worked extensively with our legal team as well as with the county, and I really like to say I appreciate all the work they put into this process.
I'd like to have a motion for approval for this.
Second.
Okay. Comments from council? Mr. Trail?
I agree. This is a good agreement. It's fair to all concerned, and it puts the responsibilities of maintenance on us because that's important, and gets the residents' participation in the cost. That's, in my opinion, long overdue. So thanks to all concerned for working out the details here.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes, I'm in support of it also. I think it's another opportunity for the residents of Sylvan Shores to see what service level we provide as a city, along with some of the other services we provide, and certainly want to encourage them to, become official part of the city, at their pleasure, anytime. We'd be glad to have them.
Mr. Olson?
Thank you. And lest anyone, whether at Sylvan Shores or in the city, think that the residents of that area are not being treated fairly, by today's money standards, it's just been a little over $1 million that the city residents of Mount Dora have contributed to Sylvan Shores since 1957. So I'm glad they're brought into the city, at least in terms of that area, and I just thought that was important.
Ms. Dodge?
No, I will. Yes, they are.
So you're in recognize
We can go ahead and let Ms. Della make.
No, I was just going to say I'm glad that this has been accomplished to everyone's satisfaction. I think it's a fair, very fair. It's actually, it may sound complicated, but it's actually pretty easy, pretty simple process. The county has the responsibility for the resident to build the residences that are in the county, and they will, give us the money that they collect. And I like the idea of truing up every year. It's just sort of like budget-based billing, so that you bill based on your best estimate, and then the next year you bill based on your actuals. So I'm real happy that this is done.
And I'll just reiterate that as I have vivid memories of the community building and the discussions those many nights that we had over this. And so we finally have gotten to something, as you have stated, Vice Mayor Tillett, that it is fair to all concerned. Rotary motto, fair to all concerned, beneficial to everyone. And we've gotten to this point, and it's taken a couple of years to get here, and it shows what a process that's focused can do so that it's in the best interest of all.
Mayor, may I add one other thing? I want to echo, I think it was you, Mayor, or somebody, I think it was our manager that complimented Charles and the council that helped out in the legal areas, and they were not uncomplex. They were very complex in some areas. But I also want to compliment our city manager for driving that. She's the one that drove that. Thank you.
Just again, my thank you to everybody for putting this together. It's been a lot of years, more than a couple of years. It's been a lot of years this issue's been going on, and I'm glad it's coming to a resolution and literally a resolution. So
Let's vote.
We have any comments from the public on this. Step forward and state your name and address, please.
Here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know this was actually coming up today. Marla Montgomery, 2387 Washington Road, which is a Sylvan Shores address. I intentionally bought in Sylvan Shores because I did not want to be in the city of Mount Dora. And I just wanted to remind the board that, or the council, that you are breaking a contract that was established in 1957 in exchange for a right-of-way. I know we've gone around and around with this, but I just want to remind you that I'm feeling that you're breaking a contract that was made in exchange for a right-of-way, 1957.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none? Name and address again, please.
I'm Dr. Christina King Harrison. And the reason I'm standing is the concerns for personnel changes. When you sever services and send them to the county, you also will be sending the tax, the fees, the other things, because the county will be vehement and aggressive toward that. So you must remember that your departmental changes, the utility department, the maintenance, and all of those departments probably will suffer, but budget-wise. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else from the public wish to address? Seeing none, council, no more. Ms. Johnson, can we have the roll call vote, please?
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Ms. Hoax?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-86, contract with Enterprise Fleet Management for vehicle leasing and maintenance. Ms. Cockcroft, can we have the title read, please?
Resolution number 2017-86, a resolution of City Council of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, authorizing the city to enter into a master equity lease agreement along with a corresponding maintenance agreement for each vehicle contained within the master equity lease with Enterprise Fleet Management, Inc., a Missouri corporation, providing for legislative and administrative findings, providing for delegation to and implementing actions by the city manager, and providing for scrivener's errors, conflicts, accessibility, and effective date.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, council members. This is a first in a while, so I'm sure you haven't seen these types of leases. So would be changing the method of purchase in individual vehicles from an as-needed basis to a fleet leasing and maintenance system through Enterprise Fleet Management. Prior to 2013, the city had its own motor pool. Due to changes in staffing, it was determined the city would save money by not replacing the motor pool staff during the economic downturn. Current labor availability to be able to service the vehicles and so forth was limited, and we looked at that from a cost basis. The benefits of moving to a fleet style of vehicle management through enterprise leasing proves the cost savings in repairs and maintenance, with the exception of tires and brakes. Which we'll see an increase for those, or typical payout for those, while the cost associated with depreciating values on the vehicles is reduced. I'd like to kind of just mention a couple things in the budget side of it, that by utilizing enterprise fee for the 46 vehicles, the projected expense is about $264,000 for the first cycle of vehicles through fiscal year 2018-19. In past years, we've actually exceeded that expense. We show in here additional savings of $986, but there's additional money that we've actually saved that we've also looked at in prior years as to budget versus actual money spent. So I'll kind of look at the current year. So in the current year, expenditures for garage repair and labor, $20,200, and tires another $6,000. We spent $116,000 to date on 7 vehicles. So that budget only had $230,000 in it. So the money that we're spending on the vehicles and so forth, if you compare the $230 to the $263, and that's 7 vehicles compared to 46 I'm purchasing through a lease. There's really not a lot of comparables to that. So there is a savings. We have looked at that. We spent time on it. We're glad to go over that with you. John Bruce, our purchasing agent and purchasing contractor, spent many hours on this. So again, I'd like to acknowledge the hours he spent and the time he spent along with legal, because again, this type of contract is not something we can enter lightly, because the contract comes from Enterprise, as well as we're piggybacking with City of Lakeland. So we spent a lot of time at looking at the resolution, looking at the current contract to make sure that it met all the requirements from a safety perspective of the city, on a liability perspective, as well as several other conditions to not hold us responsible for a lease long term, in which we may wish to eventually cut. So we may wish to cut it a couple years short, or that type of thing. So we had to put a lot of time into this lease and to research in it. But I would be glad to answer any of your questions. There's a lot of information in the request for proposal that I think is important about the fact that it's not a guaranteed contract. It's for one period with 5 years. There's some of that information that's very important to talk about. It's an open-end lease. It includes a maintenance program, physical damage program. We've worked with our police department and our other departments that are involved in this process to make sure it meets their needs in replacing the type of vehicle they may need to replace. And you will not find in this particular one vehicles like the electrical department. You'll see that in a different type, because it requires a different type of truck. So it's not all in consuming just any type of vehicle. These are selected vehicles. But again, I will answer any questions you might have.
What's the total number of vehicles on the spreadsheet?
46.
46, so 15 of the 46 are less than 5 years old, and the rest of them are more than
Much
10
older.
old, 10 on as high as 16 years old.
Yes.
So we've got quite an old inventory.
Right. And now we've maintained them, and they cost, some cost money, some do not. Some can run like
But as
some
they
run.
get older, they probably are costing more.
That's correct. And we
Maintain.
just gave you one sampling of that information in the budget.
Is that a motion for approval?
I move approval of 86.
Second.
Any
Comment?
comments from council?
All right.
Mr. Olson?
Everybody should just look at the lines in the middle of page 177 regarding the cost savings. $128,000. Now, that's what this has produced using this process. And so John, our purchasing guru, and those that supported that, including our manager, of course, and our legal counsel, I think it's a wonderful deal for the residents of Mount Dora. Remember, typically when you enter into my understanding, when you enter into a contract for leasing vehicles like this with a big group, there's a lot of controls that they have. Well, in this case, we control the price, we control the number of vehicles, we control whether we want to shorten the term, whether we want to extend the term. The make, model, and type of every vehicle is in our control, and it's got all the bookmarks to me of control at Mount Dora's end and not at the Enterprise end. So I appreciate that, the time that was taken to do that, and I especially appreciate that 6-figure savings that we see on it.
Any other comments? Seeing none, anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Seeing none, Ms. Jones, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Ms. Hope?
Yes.
Mr. Crayon?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-87, amendment to resolution number 2016-63 to include the city of Mount Dora pledged revenues for state funding, the state revolving fund. And Ms. Cockcroft, we have the title read, please.
Yes, sir. Resolution number 2017-87, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, amending resolution number 2016-63 to provide for the City of Mount Dora pledge of net revenues of the Water and Wastewater Fund for repayment of the state revolving loan, providing legislative findings and intent, providing delegation and administrative authority for implementation to the city manager, and providing for scrivener's errors, conflict severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hanks.
Yes, council members. This is simply a resolution requesting you to pledge the net revenues of the Water and Wastewater Fund for payment to the loan for the SRF. If you recall, back in December 2016, you actually approved the SRF loan to go forth. So this is a formality with the state requiring that we show that we are pledging their revenues so that they understand that the debt will be paid first when we go through a budgeting process for this particular loan, and we've looked at it for both of our loans, so this will actually extend that. The loans will be for 20 years. Debt coverage will be about 1.5 times the net available, and we'll be glad to answer any questions, but this really is just kind of concluding the process of the SRF loan and the pledge to the state with the official paperwork. And just as a note, our FA, which is our financial advisor, has reviewed this information and has given us an authorization and an okay to proceed. Excuse me.
Have a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Any questions, comments from council?
Just, as I understand, I'm sorry, you made the motion, you get this off.
Well, it's the right thing to do. I'm glad we've consulted our city financial advisor. And it really just formalizes what legally we have to do anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
My point, Mr. Crail made, it's required by the state to revolving fund, and we need that, and so I support it.
Anybody from the public wish to address this issue? Seeing none. Ms. Johns, can we have roll call vote, please?
Mr. Crail?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Ms. Hope?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-88, contract with Allied Universal Corporation to purchase sodium hypochlorite. And Ms. Cockcroft, can we have the title read, please?
Yes, sir. Resolution number 2017-88, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, to award a piggyback contract with Allied Universal Corporation, authorizing the mayor to execute the contract in accordance with sound procurement practices and principles, providing for authority to the city manager for implementing administrative actions, providing for scrivener's errors, conflict, severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, council. Sorry, thank you, council. This is a piggyback contract again that we did look at. The current price is just 66 cents a gallon for the chlorine. In this new piggyback contract with City of Stuart, it's 60 cents per gallon. We will look at going out next year for an RFQ or an RFP on this process because this piggyback also goes on top of the fact that we had an older contract in place and we need to look at new rates and new costs. But we will see a savings, so that's a wonderful thing. This will just be one example of the type of contracts that we'll look at next year. Anytime there's a commodity in state in the process, we'll always look at piggybacking that first, but we'll also go out for RFP and RFQ in the future, and we would request that you approve it.
Move to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from council, Ms. Tillett?
Nothing more than just, this is, it makes sense to do it, to piggyback when you can for commodities. And if we don't get a good price, then every so often, I think sort of routinely we should go out on an RFP or RFQ to see what else is out there. But I have no problem with saving $9,000 this year.
Anybody else? Mr. Olson?
Just as a personal privilege, all four of my children, our children, manage swimming pools, and they have to deal with chlorine. It's a dangerous commodity to deal with that. So that's another rah-rah for our manager and council, whoever did that putting the terms and conditions on page 156 in there that automatically give us the protection, the harmless and things like that. Thank you.
Anybody from the public wish to address? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Ms. Tillett,
Yes.
Mr. Creel,
Yes.
Ms. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson,
Yes.
Mr. Slavy,
Yes.
Mr. Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor Jerome,
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-90, change order number 1 for Carr and Collier Incorporated for utility construction for Wakaiva 3A and 3B. And Ms. Cockcroft, do we have the title read?
Resolution number 2017-90, a resolution of City of Mount Dora, Florida, approving work order number 1 to the contract with Carr and Collier Incorporated for utility construction for Wakaiva 3A and 3B, authorizing the mayor to approve the work order in accordance with sound procurement practices and principles, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for implementing administrative actions, providing for savings provision, providing for scrivener's errors, conflict, severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. This is a request for council to approve a work order for utility construction for Wakaiva 3A and 3B for $19,770.67. Also in this request is to approve the city manager to approve future change orders up to $200,000 through the use of additional work orders. By that, I mean that I will present to you an after-the-fact work order that states that we had a need to go ahead and proceed at doing work, whether it's at a utility area, whatever it might be, at Wakaiva 3A and 3B, and then we'll present to you after the fact the work order so that you can see everything that is happening, as well as we can put that on the website again for to be transparent, since it's not something that's coming to council ahead of time. The contractor in this case is installing utilities in line 46, designated as the 3A and 3B, and of course this type thing can happen often. The connections are to be 8-foot water and sewer reclaim. The connections are easier to install when the mains are being constructed as opposed to waiting, and that's what we'll run into along the process. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's actually two approvals in this, and to make sure that you and the public are aware that I will present those as after the fact to you as to the approval.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for approval?
I move.
Second.
Thank you. Comments from council? Seeing none. Anybody from the public wish to address? Seeing none, we have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Tucker,
Yes.
Ms. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson,
Yes.
Mr. Slavy,
Yes.
Ms. Tillett,
Yes.
Mr. Creel,
Yes.
Mayor Jerome,
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-93, approval of a minor subdivision. Have the title read, Ms. Cockcroft?
Resolution number 2017-93, resolution of City Council of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, authorizing the mayor to execute the replat, approving a minor subdivision entitled Brandon's Way, providing for the adoption of recitals and findings, providing for authorization to execute, providing for conflict, severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, this is a request for recording of the Brandon's Way replat with Lake County Clerk of Court. It's a .80 acre parcel located on the east side of Grandview Street and north of 7th Street. The property also fronts 8th Avenue. The property is located in the R2, 1, and 2 family residential zoning district and has been designated medium density residential 6 DU/AC or less. On the future land use map, the applicant's proposal is to subdivide the property into 3 residential lots. The parcel of land that fronts the existing street, 50 feet width, does not require any site improvements, can be processed under the minor subdivision review process. These are expedited requests and do not require review by the Planning and Zoning Commission. These plat types requests are all then forwarded to the City Council and approved once as a plat technical requirements have been reviewed and accepted by the DRC board. The DRC met November 30th and approved those, and the final platting comments will be presented on May 12th. The residential lots within the R2 zoning district are required to meet the minimum 6,000 square feet, which you'll notice in the proposed lot size table that one of them is 8,775 feet, one of them is 14,430 feet, and the other one is 15,720 feet. And the future home construction of these lots will be subject to review and approval by the Historic Preservation Board with submittal of a certificate of appropriateness.
A motion for approval?
Second.
Any comments from?
Mayor, let me disclose, my husband is the professional land surveyor in this project. So he's signed the survey that's there.
Do that isn't a conflict, I think. He's wondering about voting.
That's what she was asking, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
He's professionally employed as part of the plat process to sign up on the.
Yes,
survey.
by the consulting
I
company.
think she would fill out a form.
That's to be able to vote, right? Okay, fine.
But you can still vote.
Yes.
Not to vote. Not to vote.
Not to vote.
Not to vote.
It's a financial benefit to.
Okay, so she'll be abstaining. Would it be abstention? On that? Okay, fine. Okay, anybody else on the council wish to make a comment on this? Mr. Slavy.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the proper notice residence was out there so that if there was any concern that it was brought forward, or, whatever it might be.
Sure, Councilmember Slavy. Let me ask Mr. Sandersfield to come up so that we can address your question properly, because I'm not aware of a notice that was sent out. So, Mr. Sandersfield?
Vince Sandersfield, Planning and Development Office. The minor subdivisions do not require formal notice. They are published on the agenda on their website when the Development Review Committee looks at it, and of course the City Council. But by practice, there's no notification. We have received calls from concerned residents to look at the project during the process, express some concerns on the configuration, but it meets the land development code for the type. One of the lots actually go front 8th Avenue, they're front on that end of that cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I received a phone call from a constituent who is a neighbor of this undeveloped property, and his main concern was that it was not going to be a multiple family. It wasn't being rezoned for multiple families, and the answer was no, it is not. It'll be 3 single family lots.
Single family detached dwelling.
Right, single family detached dwellings, and they're going to be small based on the size of the lots. They're basically going to be, little cottages, I would think.
And go through historic preservation.
Right, and they have to go through historic ordinance. It's part of the historic district.
Mr. Olson.
And going through historical preservation is another opportunity for notice. So that will happen. And my understanding is, I can be corrected if I'm wrong, that as long as they comply with the land development code, they are entitled to do that redevelopment.
Yeah, your land development code picks out 3 lots or less can be expedited through this process with certain criteria.
Sure.
Anybody else? Anybody from the public wish to address this issue? You seeing none? Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Gillett?
Yes.
Mr. Robson?
Yes.
Mr. Crail?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-94, authorization for the mayor to sign the state revolving loan contract WW351440 for clean water. And Ms. Cockcroft, could we have the title read, please?
Yes, sir. Resolution number 2017-94, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, authorizing the mayor to sign the State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund Construction Loan Agreement, WW351440, providing for legislative administrative findings, providing delegation of implementing actions to the city manager, and providing for Scrivener's errors, conflicts, severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. This is a request for the authorization of the mayor to sign the state revolving loan, WW351440. This is with the Department of Environmental Protection under the Clean Water SRF construction loan. This project application just needs to be acknowledged and signed off. It's, again, a formality of the process completing the SRF loan. As you know, we've brought you, I think, the SRF loan application through the process. Probably this is the 4th time at this point in which we've talked about different processes that need to happen. So this is the next phase. We also stated in here the pledge of the funds. We talk about, this one's important because we talk about repayment for the 40 semi-annual loan payments first being due October of 18, so it will be included in your budget. But more importantly, I would like to say that this has an interest rate of 0.8. So this is an awesome way for the city to be able to take loans that are out there in the sense of SRF loans, and that's really what we're assigning at this point in time, Mayor, going forward.
Can we piggyback on that, Maria?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
They're coming by another house.
Have a motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, any comments, questions from council? Seeing none, anybody from the public wish to address this issue? None? Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Hoax?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-95, purchase of a new fleet replacement vehicle for the electric department. And can we have the title there, please, Ms. Cockroft?
Yes, sir. Resolution number 2017-95, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, for the purchase of a replacement vehicle through a piggyback contract, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for authority to the city manager for implementing administrative actions, providing for a saving provision, and providing for scrivener's errors, conflict, severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, council members, Mayor, if you recall, a few weeks ago, we tabled this particular item. We went back to the contractor and actually looked at expanding the contract. This is to purchase one new city replacement fleet within our electric division. As we talked about before, the vehicle currently has more than 144,000 miles, over 11 years old. The cost of it, the maintenance for last year, was $5,000. This year to date, it's $4,400. It just has become a more costly vehicle to maintain. We have reached out to the National Joint Powers Alliance, NJPA. We have piggybacked basically their bid number 120716-NAF, and it's Florida Statute 287.055. City's purchasing policy allows us to do that piggyback. The electric department fund, will actually pay for this vehicle. It's $40,826.60. And there's obviously the different quotes that we received from the company in here to show you that there were different options. And of course, we went with the standard option that we go with in order to be able to maintain our electrical equipment and the devices that are on those trucks. I would be glad to answer any of your questions. I believe Mr. Bruce is still here. Again, he actively worked this, so I'd like to say thank you to him, as well as the electric division, Charles Rebels, and Public Works. And they're available if you have any questions.
Got a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from the council? Seeing none, anybody from the public wish to address this item? Seeing none, Ms. Johnson, we have the roll call vote.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Ms. Hoax?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-98, revisions to the information technology policy manual. Ms. Cockroft, the title.
Resolution number 2017-98, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, to approve the information and technology policy manual revision, providing legislative findings and intent, providing for approval of the revision, providing for delegation and implementation authority to the city manager, providing for scrivener's errors, conflict, severability, and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. The need for this actually arose from the Criminal Justice Information System compliance requirements. We realized that we needed to update this manual and this policy. We have done so. It would typically go out as part of the typical employee handbook. And it will go out that way in the future, but at this point, we'd like to update it, actually have your blessing on it, and then in the future blessings, that will be a city manager function that will fall in the handbook, and we'd just like to answer any questions you might have of this process. Excuse me, but again, it began as part of the Criminal Justice Information System enactment, being able to clean up all the items that were required.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from the council? Mr. Slavy?
Yep. Well, it was a shame that I had to wait till 386 pages to read such a great document. But I must say that it was very well put together. I liked the employee council, if you will, the group that was added. I thought that was some really good management there to protect our assets.
That's right. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you. From the public wish to address this item? Seeing none. Have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Johnson.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mr. Slavy?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Rolfson?
Yes.
Ms. Hope?
Yes.
Mr. Creel?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Approval of resolution number 2017-99, Fourth Avenue dock repair. Ms. Cockcroft, we have the title read.
Resolution number 2017-99, a resolution of the City of Mount Dora, Florida, affirming the approval by the city manager of purchase order 17-51123 to Diversified Building Contractors, LLC, in the amount of $59,316 to repair the Fourth Avenue docks, making legislative and administrative findings, approving and authorizing the execution of documents and agreements and implementation of an interlocal agreement, and recognizing and accepting the terms and conditions set forth therein, providing for powers of the city mayor, city manager, city clerk, and city attorney, authorizing implementing administrative actions as may be deemed necessary, providing for conflict severability and effective date.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. As you are aware, we began this as an emergency. We have, we've actually issued the PO. We're out there working on it right now. So I, at that point in time, I committed to you that I would bring this as an after the fact approval so that you would be able to see everything, and if there were any questions on the contract, that you would have the opportunity to do so. The contracts with the Diversified Building Contractors in the amount of $59,316. On June 6th, we issued the purchase order 17-51123 was issued to them for that work, and it is ongoing. And I know that Mr. Peters could actually answer any questions if you have any in reference to the current state of the dock at this point in time. I know Councilmember Slavy has mentioned to me several times that this is such an asset for our citizens as well as our tourists to go down there and spend time. And I know I've spoken to Councilmember Host a few times about her residents up in her area walking down there and spending time. So I hope to have that open for them soon. And if you'd like the update from Mr. Peters, we could extend that to him. But thank you for the consideration on being able to do this as an after the fact.
A motion for approval.
I move.
Second.
Any comments from council? Mr. Slavy?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to commend the city manager for taking care of this, and obviously there's much detail into it that we don't know, you know, and of course we all want it fast, but we also want it safely and done right, so I appreciate it. But, if there's anything in that process that we can do better to help you, you know, with these sorts of things, just let us know so that we can help out.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawson?
I look at it this way. I support what Mr. Slavy said. This is an exigent issue. It's a potential liability issue that we're resolving, and so we need to act on this. And I appreciate the expediting that the manager has done along with Mr. Peters.
And I never assume anything, but I know you've done it. I mean, obviously, first company we used, they met our expectations when they did it, but here we are, what, 4 or 5 years later? I don't know what, Roy or Chris, how many years later is it? But anyway, and they were low bid. We've got low bid this time, but y'all are very comfortable that this company's going to be here and da-da-da-da-da.
That's correct. We spent some time going through this. Mr. Bruce, again, spent quite a bit of time going through this process, as well as Roy. And again, John Peters, our city Public Works Director, spent time, and he has actually project engineered this from the time that he spends down there, not necessarily Roy on the Parks and Rec side, but John has. So we put some different provisions in here to carry us through a little longer. The other one was the 1 year, which was a typical contract requirement. This one carries us through the 18 months on top of the required time for the equipment to run out of its time. So there's also a warranty on the parts, not the equipment, sorry.
Right,
So,
but the company that we used before is no longer in business,
that's correct. This company's been checked out.
And they also had done the engineering, so they are no, right?
That's
So
correct. And we had Bentley.
I'm just crossing T's and dotting I's here because this is our second go around, and we thought we were right the first time.
Right, and we had Bentley engineer this one, so we've actually gone through the 2 different processes this time. So we feel pretty comfortable with this at this point in time.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I was kind of surprised that there was a $15,000 or a little bit more than $15,000 difference between the two bids. So that was sort of like, wow. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what they were gold-plated bolts or something, but, so I'm comfortable with, you know, sometimes low bid's not always the best bid or the, you know, the best qualified, but I'm comfortable with what you, what Mr. Bruce and the gang has done, so that's good.
And keep in mind, in an emergency, we're not required to go with low bid, but, I mean, that it should be looked at, but it does change it a little bit from it being an emergency, so.
Any other comments? And, any comments from the public on this?
When do we anticipate the docks being open again? Do we have just a rough guesstimate?
Mr. Penny.
By the end of the summer or by the end of July or?
He went out today, I believe.
We had our pre-construction meeting last week. They had started work. We approved all the shop drawings earlier today, and scheduled to be done by July 3rd.
July 3rd? Okay, great.
We want to have it open for the
freedom for the fireworks.
precious firecrackers. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on with the bang. Mr. Peters?
John.
Mr. Peters?
John.
Mr. Peters, turn around. Almost. Just real quick, and when we deal with these public works contracts, like the docks, like the different things that we do around the city, is there a minimum or a level where performance bonds and different insurances are required from these contractors, even if they do go out of business, that there's a bond or something out there that we can go attach to when we have these kind of things break down on
That's actually a good question for Mr. Bloom. It's my understanding that we can get additional insurance.
Not us.
Oh.
Requirement from the contractors.
The performance bond information may come from Mr. Bruce, if we can let him come up for just a moment.
Yeah, anything over 25,000.
Come up, Mr. Bruce. Thank you.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, stretch your legs. You look like you wanted to stretch your legs. We're gonna take a break for a second.
Anything over $25,000 contract requires a performance bond and a payment bond and material bond. So we're always covered in that respect, and I get insurance from that.
We have, please. Thank you.
So we're good. In any contract we have insurance and bonds on file.
Appreciate that. So I know it's been some issue. We always ask when something happens, do we have a performance bond? Sometimes it goes beyond the years that they're there, but that's unfortunate too. But as long as we try to get as much coverage as we can for these contractors, and it kind of protects you sometime from the low bidder that you have that thing. But I know the laws, the state laws for purchasing, you, as long as they're responsible, qualified, responsible bidders, you have to give it to a low bidder if they're responsive, or responsive and responsible, except for emergencies, right? I know there's some other issues in there too, but thank you very much for the information.
And I'd just like to introduce John Bruce. He did not mention his name, but he's our purchasing contract agent. His title's probably a little different than
like the guru.
Yes, the guru. So John has, and a lot of these items that you've seen tonight, I would like to say that he's definitely been involved. He spent a lot of time on the fleet and several of the other programs, so we appreciate all that he's doing. He's spending a lot of time with legal, and we're actually developing some new processes and policies. So again, I'd just like to say thank you to him.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Ms. Jones, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Ms. Hope?
Yes.
Mr. Robson?
Yes.
Mr. Slady?
Yes.
Mr. Trail?
Yes.
Ms. Tillett?
Yes.
Mayor Jerome?
Yes. Before we take a short break, I just want to thank all the staff and everybody who, there was a lot of resolutions tonight, and we got through them really good. There was a lot of good information had to be put together for these resolutions. And again, thanks for all their hard work and diligence in putting these all together tonight. And let's take about a 5-10 minute break. Firecracker cars, and there's more.